Tim Hague Reads Books, presented by Tim Hague. Iain Banks is among Britain's most entertaining, robust and inventive writers. On the day of publication of his new science fiction novel, Surface Detail, he talked to Tim Hague about why advanced civilizations would create hells, whether continuity of consciousness is necessary to personhood, whether suffering and anguish have any significance in virtual reality, and insanity in AI, while not neglecting big explosions, space warships, laser cannons and stuff.
Iain Banks is two novelists. I know it's a cliche, but we're going to go there anyway. He published his first book in 1984, which was The Wasp Factory, which made him a star. Since then, there have been a dozen of what I'm going to describe as mainstream novels.
For want of a better word.
For want of a better word.
Yes.
It's wildly inappropriate, but let's call them mainstream novels. And, of course, you have another persona, another incarnation, as Iain M. Banks, the science fiction novelist. Well, today's book is Surface Detail, which is just out. And I count this as, is it 25 books in 26 years, or 26 books if you include the whiskey one?
I think it's 26, yeah. And
You've been busy.
I have, indeed. Well, it doesn't feel that way to me, because I write fast. Once I get going, off like an express train. So it feels like quite a fairly easy workload to me. But then, as I say, I do have the blessed ability to write fairly quickly.
Is science fiction your first love?
Yes, I mean, not in the technical sense. I came to it sort of when I was about 12 or very early sort of teens is when I really discovered. I'd probably read one or two short stories or whatever, or children's things that were technically science fiction, but I hadn't really identified them as such. But I was around about that sort of age, on the cusp of teenagehood, when I was able to identify science fiction as a specific genre, which you could simply go to the library and get more of by looking for the magic letters SF. So in that sense, yes it is.
Well, Surface Detail is, if it's a science fiction book and an Iain Banks book, it's going to be in the context of the culture.
Not necessarily. Some of them aren't.
Some of them aren't.
Yeah, but
this is a culture novel.
Yeah, oh, entirely. Yes, absolutely. You can tell that because it's got drones and spaceships with ridiculous names.
I love the spaceships' names.
So do I.
Yeah, they're all called things like Sense Amid Madness, Wit Amongst Folly,
yep,
and the Me I'm Counting, and the Falling Outside the Normal Moral Constraints.
That would be a warship. You can usually, the ones that are, the warships usually got the best names because they've usually got sort of double meanings. There was one of the warship names I was most pleased with was Attitude Adjuster.
Yes.
Which is originally a NASA term. And Frank Exchange of Views. I also thought that was a good name for a warship. So I take great and enormous joy in naming the ships. It's one of the sort of treats, one of the perks.
Do 30 seconds on the culture. Let's put this in context before we start talking about this particular story.
Oh, the culture is it's a humanoid society, but it's got lots of, they're called minds. They're basically very sort of highly rated AIs, artificial intelligences, and it's a kind of a sort of hybrid civilization in the sense that it's no longer just about the humans, it's about the machines as well. So it's a cooperative, collegiate kind of civilization. It's not, in a sense, for us it would be in our far future, thousands of years hence, or at least many hundreds. But the way it works in the stories is that there's lots of humanoid races.
You call them pan-human, don't you?
Pan-human, yeah. The idea is there's lots of people.
And actually, they're jolly human.
Like us,
they have all the foibles and all the faults.
They kind of have to. Otherwise, you're kind of limiting yourself in terms of what you can, sort of stories you can tell. So, yes, they kind of have to, and that's intensely dubious from a strictly factual point of view. What one imagines the facts of genuine alienness might actually be. They'll probably be too alien for us to really understand. But that's the thing. We don't know. We haven't met any yet. So, at the moment, you still have carte blanche.
This is a fairly philosophical book. There are two main themes that I want to talk about. One is that you've got within the context of the story, there's an arrangement of virtual reality hells. All the civilizations that have reached a certain level have developed an afterlife where they can download a mind state, which is an accurate, perfect representation of a sort of organistic.
It's the soul, but in the sort of secular sense,
and they're able to then offer to their members who die an afterlife. I love the way that you think that a great many of them opt for hells as opposed to heavens.
Well, that's the individual concerned don't opt. That's
the civilizations. I mean.
Yes, quite. Again, I imagine that would probably be quite a small sort of percentage, as it were, of the civilizations like that. The only a few would be, so old-fashioned in a sense, whatever, to actually impose the idea of hell, but enough for it to be statistically significant, as it were. There'd be enough that would be regarded as a problem within the greater galactic community.
Well, it is a problem because the book is about a war over the status of
no,
these
the very
afterlives.
existence.
It's
in
a war.
sense, yes.
We call it a war in heaven, but it's really a war about hell.
Yeah.
And the war is also conducted on the level of simulation of artificial reality.
Because that's a sensible place to have your wars, because it's less wasteful, basically.
Unless one side loses and decides to cheat.
That's a sticking point in the book, because in theory you both have to come to a very firm and binding agreement right at the start that you won't do that. But obviously, if it matters to you enough, then you might decide to throw that rule out if it looks like going against you. And that, in a sense, is what that point is where the book is sort of kicking off.
Well, that's right. That brings us to the other significantly philosophical strand, which is there's a and you haven't laboured the point, but there's a big discussion of what it is to be a person, and this mind state, this soul that you've got that we can download onto some substrate of and into a virtual heaven or hell. This can be done repeatedly, of course. In the book, we can bring people back and put them into a new body, or we can move them around into all sorts of virtual places. And it sort of brings up the question of what constitutes a person, whether continuity is necessary to personality.
I think the thing about continuity is it is important, but at the same time we have to understand that we don't have perfect continuity ourselves. We would absolutely argue that we are. First of all, that we are conscious, that we are fully functioning conscious entities as human beings, and also that we have a very firm idea of ourselves as individuals, as long as we haven't had any major traumas or congenital diseases or whatever. If we are in that sense normal, and our sort of what's basically been the development of our brain and our sort of socialisation as individuals, then we are absolutely convinced that we are the same person from any given moment to moment. But in a sense, we're not really. I mean, for a start, there's that big sort of almost unconscious thing we go through called sleep every night, where often we have quite traumatic dreams or things that we're not sure at the time whether they're real or not. We get knocked out. I know myself. I've been knocked out once or twice and woken up and I literally couldn't remember my own name. Just kind of. I remember thinking, this is fascinating. I'm looking forward to finding out my name really soon now, because that'll be very reassuring. But it was kind of interesting not to even know that absolutely most basic thing. And I still had some vague, sense of self. I'd only been out for a few seconds, or whatever. But so it's not as though we actually do ourselves have perfect continuity. It's our personalities, our view of ourselves, in a sense, is manufactured almost sort of day to day. In a sense,
sort of begs the question though about whether it matters. I mean, but once you've got a soul in hell, and if it is not in the what you call the real. Does the anguish matter? Or if you're going to die in the virtual realities, does the anguish of death count for anything?
Yes. So I think this is something that I've certainly come around to the idea of. It's something that I've kind of incorporated into the culture's, sort of ethos, that it's very largely about suffering. This is what it's really about. It's only with intelligence, in a sense, and empathy and ability to project into the future that you can, in a sense, truly suffer. That is when it's possible to, because you anticipate, torture that might come, or you anticipate the death of a loved one or whatever. And it's really about the attempt to forestall or to minimise suffering in the first place. And if suffering does happen to any, conscious entity at any level, the attempt to alleviate and ameliorate that suffering, and that applies on a sort of sliding scale from things that you would say, well, I can't really suffer. Like, can I fly? An insect suffer? Whereas a young puppy, you can imagine it suffering. Human beings, fully developed, or when they're still children, can definitely suffer. You can imagine that if we assume we do create artificial intelligences, that they too will be able to suffer. And that, in a sense, is where it really boils down to. And then this is where morality really exists, is not causing suffering if you can possibly avoid it. If you encounter it, doing your damnedest to try and get rid of it.
Oh, yeah, but somebody once said that the Puritans' problem with bear baiting was not that the bear suffers. The Puritans hated that the spectators enjoyed it, and I'm with the Puritans on that one, unusually, because that's exactly the point about bear baiting. That's what's wrong with blood sports or something. Is that terrible things happen in nature. Of course they do, and animals will be torn horribly to pieces in nature. But when it is consciously done to them, that's a different context, a different morality.
Absolutely, yes. But I think that there's still a moral component to the bear's suffering. I think that it's still a creature capable of suffering. It won't feel it to the same degree that we might. I mean, we want to assume. But it's not completely irrelevant. But yeah, I would agree that the main component of that thing that you have to be most worried about is the sort of willing self-brutalization of the people who regard this as fit and proper entertainment, and the fact that because you're deliberately causing something that the analogy of which happens in the real world, and bears will male polar bears, for example, will attack and kill female polar bears and attack the young as well. That's not the point. There's no sort of conscious.
It's not a moral act.
Yeah, there's no sort of conscious determination to do this for sport and inverted commas for entertainment, whatever. So yeah, I can see both points of view. What I'm saying is that the bear's suffering is not completely irrelevant as well. Again, it's on that sliding scale that its suffering matters as well.
I've rather run the risk of implying that this book is a terribly cerebral and thoughtful thing, which
we've missed out the laser cannon. Damn it! Oh no!
Which it isn't at all. It's rollicking and absolutely marvellous.
Lots of big explosions and stuff.
Oh, lots of events and lots of sex and violence and humour and all. I mean, all the things that you actually wanted to be to make it utterly entertaining. I loved the passages in hell. I mean, they're harrowing, but I was terribly engaged. You've got two very, very alien characters who've been effectively sent into this hell to report back because it's denied. Yeah. Of course, hell is deniable.
Of course,
maybe it doesn't really exist. So, and I wondered if. I mean, did you plan to write as much hell as you wound up doing, or did you get engaged? Yeah. Did you get caught up in it because it really does work?
No, they kind of, whenever you're doing that stuff, and in some ways the more harrowing something is, the more you have to watch out for this, is you get to a point you think, well, I could, in theory, I'm only supposed to stay in this for a couple of thousand words or whatever, but you feel you kind of have to do justice to it, and the more sort of harrowing it is in a way, the more you can't just sort of, pan away with the authorial camera, the camera eye, as it were. You have to do justice to it. You have to sort of see it through to the end. To the extent.
And you did. I mean, it's almost a novel within itself. The hell passages.
So yeah, that's my excuse basically. But yeah, it was a little bit more to it than I thought there was going to be. But it just wasn't something I felt comfortable saying. There you go, bit of hell, and now on with the rest of the story. You just couldn't really do that.
No, and you made the right decision. You'll be
good.
Relieved to hear. Let's talk about some of the other characters. In particular, and almost your main characters are an intagliate woman. We'll explain that word in a moment. Called Lededja, and her owner, who is Joyla Vepers. Can we hear about them?
Well, Lededja's she's intagliate, as you say. I'm still not entirely sure myself how to pronounce it, but intagliate or intagliate, whatever. And she's very tattooed. I mean, she makes completely tattooed people, as we understand.
I mean, all the way down to
her eyes are tattooed, her teeth are tattooed, beneath her nails are tattooed.
Her inner organs,
are tattooed. Her bones are tattooed. Even the pores on her skin are arranged.
And this has been done artificially to her to designate her as a possession.
Yeah, it's the idea of this. It's called the Sechult, the civilization that she's part of, and it's their way of sort of paying off familial debt. And if you can't afford to pay off the buildings that you owe, then your family, or either yourself or future generations, are forced to become intagliate, so that the people to whom you owe the debt can sort of parade them. And they are in fact slaves. In theory, they have legal safeguards regarding their treatment, but
Joyla Vepers doesn't do legal safeguards.
Not really, well, apart from over property and money, obviously. He's a media magnate and also a sort of part of a family that's established their various fortunes. In fact, one of the first ones starting with basically computer games, going way back. And he's simply the richest man, not just in the world, but in this entire sort of multiplanetary civilization. And a bit of a monster.
Really, he has no redeeming characteristics
Well,
at all.
he can be charming. I think, I hope I managed to get across the idea of him being sort of charming, or whether he's just charming because everyone has to think he's charming. The same way that Peter the Terrible was great, or Ivan the Wonderful, or something, whatever. You know what I mean? Maybe everyone simply has to assume.
You can sort of hear all his courtiers laughing at the jokes.
Yes. How dare it be funny, sir? Yes.
But what you've done, of course, with him is you've made him a terrible, a truly bad. I'm going to call him a person, even though he's a sea shortian. But he's the most human character in the book. He could be in any book. You could write a completely non-science fiction novel.
Oh yes, he's certainly got quite a few of the standard human feelings. That's for sure. Yeah.
And yet you've I'm going to say put him on the side of the angels. That's not true. What you've done is you've positioned him so that he mustn't be interfered with. And you enjoyed that, didn't you? You enjoyed the moral ambiguity of that.
Hell yeah! I mean that's. The thing is, you've always got to be careful, especially writing sort of space opera, science fiction at this sort of level where you have got such control over all the variables and over the various societies and civilizations involved, of getting too sort of preachy and of making it too sort of black hat.
Well, you've also
white
got a
hat,
problem that culture is more or less completely good.
Yeah,
basically.
Opinions differ,
it's solved the problem of want. It's got limitless resources. It's solved the problem of power in the sense that essentially all the members of culture opt into it, and it's although there are different functions, there's not a huge hierarchy.
Not really. Well, there is, only in the sense of there's the human beings and to some extent the drones, and then there's the minds who are really in charge.
They're just a lot smarter than everything. In fact, how do you pronounce it? Ime. You've got a character called Yime.
Oh, Yaim. How's it called? I pronounce it like lime with a Y instead of an L.
I've spent 630 pages calling her Ime.
So
Iain,
yes, that's your experience. You can pronounce her name as you choose.
And you've got her at one point at home where she doesn't have any of these artificial intelligences because she rather likes to be the smartest thing in her environment.
Yes,
and that's really unusual in the culture.
Oh yeah, but absolutely not banned her. I think quite hard to to arrange in a sense, but it can be done. But that's the whole point of the culture, is that you can more or less do as you damn well please. With again the usual proviso, but not harming others, etc. But yeah, that's just an expression of how the
some of your ships do as they damn well please. Some of them are downright quirky.
Yeah,
I use the word quirky?
Quirky, definitely.
Insane.
Well, quirky, I think quirky is a euphemism, frankly.
Quirky as a fruitcake.
Insane, yeah. But I mean, even that is, in a sense, is deliberate. I mean, the one we're really talking about is one who's got the human sort of avatar called Demyson.
Yeah.
And their ship's name is falling outside the normal moral constraints. Well, the clue is kind of in the title, and it's one of the sort of class of ultra powerful warships that the culture is stationed, various places as sort of fire brigade stuff around the galaxy, and they have a reputation for being slightly mad, and that basically means that you wouldn't fornicate with them, because they're kind of unpredictable, and that's the way to be if you want to keep people.
It's odd though, because that's where you've put the sort of the lunacy in your universe. I remember in the Player of Games there was one called Marwyn Skell or something.
The
distinctly
drones,
odd little drone with very a lot of personality.
Well, the idea behind that was because one of the sort of ideas behind the way the culture is set up is that it doesn't sort of manufacture these artificial intelligences. For the drones, which is what Warren Skell was, which are a bit more than one human intelligence, as it were, a bit more than that, slightly more intelligent than humans, but not much.
That doesn't take much, though.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yes, I'm aiming low. Whereas the minds are like gazillions of times more intelligent, whatever. But in both cases, the culture deliberately doesn't, sort of precisely manufacture them according to very rigid specifications. There's quite a lot of leeway, a lot of play left, as it were. And some of the minds that come out of the minds, or relatively simple AIs that come out the other end, are just a bit nuts. There's a distribution curve, and the vast majority are fine and okay. And
the ones in your books?
Well, some of them, and to prove the point, some of them are either a bit too violent, in which case they cannot be used for the purposes that they were meant to be used for. Well, yeah, exactly. You have to be under control, especially in a war, in a sense. Unless you want the reputation for madness, of course. Or they're too insular. And there's definitely an idea, I think it's expressed in a couple of the novels, that some of the minds in particular that are created just go, they're sort of, brought to consciousness, wake up and go, oh, well, thank you, but I'm off now,
Yeah,
and
they do, don't they?
just
So
go, just head off,
for years
or whatever,
decades
and they're utterly sufficient unto themselves and don't really want to have anything to do with the culture. And the culture just accepts that as part of it. But they're benefiting from having a great variety of different minds that will come up with different ideas and behave differently and just be interesting.
Do you think that people would ever be content or even comfortable with machines that were infinitely more intelligent than and I think of things, think of like Star Trek in the past, where in order to compensate, Mr. Spock and Mr. Data have to be emotional idiots in order to, as it were, to compensate for the fact that they're much smarter than Captain Kirk and Captain Picard.
Well, that's us being sort of speciesist. We're so, there's this real sort of drive in humanity to regard ourselves as absolutely the bee's knees. Nothing can be better than us. So any other species or any other individual, if they're going to be smarter than us, has to suffer, proportionately in some other way. They have to have some other sort of weakness or bizarreness sort of built in to compensate for the fact that they're uncomfortably, annoyingly more clever than we are. And in the culture, that's just swept away. That's just nonsense. I mean, humans in that sense in the culture don't matter. Only the minds really do. Having said that, there's very much an idea in the culture that it fades out at the edges, and there's entire groups and almost
because there are other civilizations.
And there's ones that think we are the real culture, and this is the main bit of it that you encounter in the novels is some bizarre and rather sort of bloated offshoot that doesn't deserve to call itself the culture because it's still involved with warfare, say, or because it is completely, as they see it, subservient to the minds. So it's not a sort of done deal in that way. This is all there is to the culture. But certainly, there has to be some variation in the way that the minds and the AIs come out of the process of their own creation, in which they have a degree of self-making, as it were, going on, just so that that you're not getting simple automata. So you have to build that variety in.
Nobody's made any movies of your science fiction books, have they? Would you like to see it? Yeah, you would like to see it.
Yeah, particularly Consider Fleabus. I'm sure there's one.
The first one. Great title, by the way. I know where that comes from. That's from the Wasteland.
Part 4, in fact, one of the later novels comes from the very next line, because it's a Gentile or Jew or you who look to windward.
Look to windward, yes, of course, that's right.
Consider Fleabus.
Oh, good for you. Of course you know.
So, it's one that's Consider Fleabus has all the most spectacular stuff in it. It's got lots of
big stuff,
ridiculous set pieces.
James Cameron stuff.
Kinda. And I'd love to see that filmed, because I'm just a boy at heart, and I'm the child of Jerry Anderson. I took to Thunderbirds and all those big explosions far too naturally as a child,
I'm trying to see your books done with puppets. It's just not working.
No, it wouldn't work, would it? No. Even Jerry had abandoned the strings towards the end, So.
Iain, the book is Surface Detail. It's out now. It's $16.99 from Orbit, and it's absolutely marvellous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was Tim Haig Reads Books, presented by Tim Haig. Tim Haig Reads Books is a Green Shoot production. More details can be found at www.green-shoot.com, or Tim can be contacted on tim@green-shoot.com.